October 26, 1942, Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. It's 10:30 at night. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page grips the wooden stock of his water-cooled Browning machine gun, eyes fixed on the dark jungle. Japanese soldiers break from the trees, coming fast. The sharp crack of Arisaka rifles splits the muggy night air. But something's different now. Mixed in with the usual slow, thunderous shots of Marine Springfields, there's a new, rapid sound, almost like a drum roll. The 164th Infantry Regiment from North Dakota had landed 13 days earlier on October 13th. They were the first U.S. Army unit to take the fight to the Japanese on Guadalcanal, and they brought something new, a weapon that would flip the rules of infantry combat. Japanese troops storming toward Henderson Field had no idea what they were running into. For the first time in the Pacific, American soldiers faced them with a mass issue of semi-automatic rifles. The M1 Garand had arrived, and everything was about to change. The Pacific War exposed a big weakness in how American infantry fought. Japanese soldiers, hardened by years in China, used the Banzai Charge, a full-force infantry rush designed to break through by sheer numbers and guts against Chinese troops armed with slow-firing Mauser rifles. These tactics were brutal but effective. The reality of bolt-action rifles was unforgiving. A well-trained soldier might squeeze off 15 aimed shots a minute, but after each round, he had to work the bolt. Lift, pull, push, lock. Those precious seconds let charging attackers close the gap. In the thick jungle, where you rarely saw more than 100 yards, that was dangerous. The Japanese knew this all too well. Their Arisaka rifles, good, solid bolt actions, fired no faster than the American Springfields, so Japanese doctrine doubled down on close combat and bayonet charges. Hit hard, get close, overwhelm. But back in Massachusetts, something different was happening. Since 1936, the Springfield Armory had quietly been turning out a new kind of rifle. The M1 Garand replaced the old Springfield on January 9th, 1936. This wasn't just a tweak. It was a rethink of what a rifle could be. It changed more than just firepower. Suddenly, the armies with better factories and smarter designs started pulling ahead. Germany had its MG-34 machine gun. Japan focused on carriers and planes. America? It was about to prove that a well-armed rifleman could still tip the scales in battle. John Garand himself was an unlikely figure to change history. Born just outside Montreal, moved to Connecticut at 11, working in a textile mill at 12, and inventing tools by 14. In 1919, he landed at Springfield Armory. His early rifle designs didn't catch on, but Garand didn't quit. He kept tinkering until he built a gas-operated mechanism that set his rifle apart. Instead of reloading by hand, the M1 used the force from each fired bullet to eject the old case and load the next round. Fast, smooth, reliable, the M1 Garand was a marvel. 9.5 pounds, a stiff barrel, and an 8-round clip. Every time you fired, the expanding gas worked the action, spitting out the spent shell, chambering a new round, and cocking the hammer, all in less than 1/10 of a second. That mattered. Instead of 15 shots a minute, a soldier could fire 40 or even 50 aimed rounds, 3 times the firepower. More important, he never lost his aim, never had to stop to work a bolt. Each trigger pull sent a 30.06 round screaming out with 2,800 foot-pounds of energy, enough to punch through nearly 2 feet of solid pine at 100 yards. The game had changed, and on Guadalcanal, the Japanese were about to find out just how much. The numbers said it all. American industry was gearing up for war. Fast. At Springfield Armory, they started making rifles in September 1937, just 10 a day to begin with. Within 2 years, that number jumped to 100 a day. By December 1941, they'd cranked out nearly 30,000 M1 rifles. Still, that was just warming up. What gave the M1 rifle an edge wasn't just the design, it was the designer. John Garand knew manufacturing inside and out, not just the nuts and bolts of guns, but the machinery and processes behind them. He didn't just create a rifle, he made sure it could be built quickly and efficiently. That combination mattered when the country suddenly needed to arm millions. Flash forward to the night of October 24th, 1942. Marines would remember it as Dugout Sunday, but history calls it the Battle for Henderson Field. Lieutenant Colonel Chesty, Puller's battalion, held a crucial stretch of the perimeter. His men, mostly using old Springfield rifles, had been fighting for weeks, low on ammo, high on casualties. Puller called for backup, and the Army's 164th Infantry showed up, led by Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hall from North Dakota. Private Leonard Stvanik, one of the 164th, remembered the Marines eyeing their M1 rifles like they were something strange. The Marines had never seen the M1 in action. Some even thought that semi-automatic firing would just burn through ammunition too fast. At 9 p.m., Japanese artillery opened up. Intel said General Maruyama's division had massed over 7,000 troops for the attack. The Japanese plan was simple: send wave after wave of infantry, counting on gaps in American fire every time a Marine had to reload his bolt-action rifle. Puller and Hall mixed their units together, Army soldiers in foxholes beside Marines, so the new M1s could cover the gaps. When the Japanese charged at 10 p.m., they came out of the jungle in tight groups, bayonets and swords gleaming, shouting, "Banzai!" The Marines fired back with their Springfields, the sharp cracks of bolt-action rifles filling the air. But mixed in, the 164th's ones added something new. The difference was obvious. Marines had to pause to work their bolts, losing sight of their targets for a split second. The soldiers with M1s just kept firing 8 shots as fast as they could pull the trigger, each shot driving into the crowded attackers. You could hear the metallic ping when the M1's clip popped out. Then in 3 seconds they were loaded and firing again. Corporal Joseph Leo of the 164th later said the Japanese came just like they'd been warned, but they weren't ready for the wall of gunfire. The defenders' fire didn't let up. There were no easy gaps to exploit. The second wave hit at 11:30, even bigger than before. Japanese tactics called for each wave to push harder, expecting the Americans to run low on ammo or energy. But the M1s changed the game. Against the old Springfields, the Japanese might have broken through. Not this time. At dawn, the bodies of more than 2,200 Japanese soldiers covered the ground outside Henderson Field. Fewer than 100 Americans were dead or wounded. The 164th's firepower turned the tide. The Marines took notice, and the Army Regiment earned a Navy Presidential Unit citation. Corporal Kenneth Fubar of the 164th had already made history days earlier. The first U.S. Army soldier killed in combat after Pearl Harbor, hit by bomb shrapnel on October 13th as he landed on the beach. Guadalcanal's victory sent shockwaves through both sides. Pacific commanders demanded more M1 rifles. Now, Springfield Armory went to round-the-clock shifts. The transformation was dramatic. Production lines retooled overnight. People who used to build typewriters and sewing machines now pieced together the weapon that would define America's infantry in the war. By the middle of 1943, Springfield was cranking out more rifles than ever, over 4,000 a day. Back in 1940, they brought in Winchester Repeating Arms Company as a second supplier for the M1 Garand. Winchester already knew how to mass-produce sporting rifles, which turned out to be a huge advantage at their New Haven, Connecticut plant. They tore down and rebuilt entire production lines, rolling out new methods that made everything run smoother. That factory overhaul really showed what American industry could do when it got moving for war. Companies that once made hunting gear suddenly became the backbone of the military effort. By 1943, Winchester had over 15,000 people on payroll, working around the clock in 3 shifts. Women who had never touched a rifle before became experts at putting them together. Inspectors checked each rifle at 37 separate stations to make sure nothing slipped through. Production shot up fast. By 1941, they were turning out more than 600 rifles a day. All told, U.S. factories produced about 5.4 million N1 Garands during the war. This kind of industrial output was something new, a mix of old-school craftsmanship and cutting-edge mass production that no one had ever tried on military weapons before. Building just one rifle took 150 separate steps. The receiver alone needed 72 different machining operations. Barrels started as solid steel bars and had to be drilled out, 24 inches deep with tolerances tight enough that you'd barely see the difference with the naked eye. Cutting the rifling was another challenge. 6 grooves, twisted to the right at one turn in 10 inches, which was perfect for stabilizing the .30-06 round. But making rifles was only half the job. They had to get them to the front lines, no easy task. The supply chain stretched all the way from Springfield and New Haven to training camps across the U.S., then onto ports across seas patrolled by enemy subs, and finally to depots in England, North Africa, and the Pacific. November 8, 1942, Operation Torch kicked off. While the 164th Infantry was still fighting on Guadalcanal, American troops landed in North Africa. The 1st Infantry Division, the big red one, came ashore at Oran, Algeria, every soldier carrying an M1 Garand. North Africa was a whole new world compared to the Pacific. Open desert, long-range gunfights over 500 yards. The M1's reliability and accuracy were put to the test in tough conditions. Sand, dust, and wild temperature swings from blistering days to freezing nights pushed every part of the rifle to its limits. Then there were the stories from the front. Technical Sergeant William Crawford, 36th Infantry Division, earned the Medal of Honor near Altavilla, Italy, in September 1943. His citation tells how he charged 3 German machine gun nests by himself. Just him, his Garand, and a few grenades. He kept the enemy's heads down with rapid fire, got close, and finished the job. Fighting in Italy wasn't anything like the desert. The mountains gave defenders the edge, but the M1 still proved its worth. When German troops counterattacked near Altavilla that September, Corporal Charles Commando Kelly of the 143rd Infantry Regiment held them off with his automatic rifle until it jammed. He grabbed another, and when that failed too, he yanked the pins from 60mm mortar shells and tossed them like grenades, taking out at least 5 enemy soldiers. Kelly's actions, whether with rifles or whatever he could get his hands on, showed the kind of gutsy tactics the M1 made possible. Private First Class Floyd K. Lindstrom, 3rd Infantry Division, picked up the Medal of Honor too near Mignano, Italy. On November 11th, 1943, his squad got pinned down by German machine guns, but Lindstrom used his M1 to lay down covering fire, then flanked the enemy and took out the position with grenades. The speed and accuracy of the Garand gave him the edge he needed. German troops, stuck with their bolt-action Karabiner 98K rifles, kept finding themselves outgunned. The Wehrmacht tried to crank out more MP-40 submachine guns and rushed to build their own semi-automatic rifles like the G43, but they never caught up. While Germany struggled to make 400,000 G43s during the whole war, America had already built over 2 million Garands by the end of 1943. The M1 wasn't just a rifle, it was a symbol of how American industry and firepower could change the game. Wherever the fight happened, Getting enough M1 rifles to the front lines didn't happen overnight. In Italy, lots of American units didn't have Garands until the middle of 1944. The guys still stuck with the old M19903 Springfield struggled, especially in those brutal, close-up mountain fights. The Italian campaign really drove home how much of a difference the M1 Garand's reliability made. The mountains brought endless rain, mud, and snow, but the M1's gas-operated system, complicated as it was, just kept working. Soldiers said that even when the rifle was caked in mud, a quick field cleaning was usually enough to get it shooting again. Then came June 6, 1944, D-Day. As American troops hit Omaha Beach, they carried their M1s wrapped in special gas-proof bags and coated with preservatives to survive the salt water. Private Carlton W. Barrett from the 18th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, earned the Medal of Honor that day. Armed with his M1 Garand and ammo he picked up from fallen friends, Barrett took out a German machine gun squad that had his unit pinned down on the beach. Normandy's hedgerow country was like nothing the Americans had seen. Fights happened at point-blank range, rarely more than 50 yards apart. In that kind of chaos, the ability to fire quickly and accurately while moving really mattered. By late summer, a lot of sergeants and officers gave up their lighter M1 carbines for the Garand, going for that powerful .30-06 round that could smash through doors and brick walls in the towns and villages they fought through. Staff Sergeant Walter D. Ehlers from the 18th Infantry Regiment earned the Medal of Honor near Gille, France. On June 9th and 10th, 1944, for 2 days, Ehlers used his M1 Garand to knock out German positions, even charging a mortar crew alone and wiping them out with rapid, aimed fire. The Battle for St. Lo in July 1944 showed what the M1 could do in urban combat. With house-to-house fighting, you needed a weapon that could punch through walls and barricades. The M1's .30-06 round could blow holes through brick where smaller rounds just bounced off. Pretty soon, German troops learned to fear the sound of a whole group of Garands firing in quick bursts. On October 20th, 1944, the invasion of Leyte in the Philippines, General Douglas MacArthur waded ashore, keeping his promise to return. 4 Army divisions landed with him, all carrying M1s, and they faced some of the toughest Japanese resistance of the war. The Philippines campaign put every part of the M1's design to the test. Monsoon rains, suffocating tropical humidity, salt from the sea, and endless mud. The Japanese knew by then how much more firepower the Americans had, so they changed their tactics. No more massed banzai charges. Instead, they used infiltration, spider holes, and tunnels. Private First Class Dirk J. Vlug from the 126th Infantry Regiment, 32nd Infantry Division, showed just how effective the M1 could be in that kind of fight. On December 15, 1944, near Lyman Leyte, Vlug took out 5 Japanese positions by himself. With his M1 Garand and a rocket launcher he'd picked up from a wounded buddy, he destroyed multiple enemy strongpoints, keeping the defenders pinned with rapid fire as he moved in. Then came the Battle for Manila in February 1945, urban warfare on a scale the Pacific hadn't seen before. Every building was a fortress. Every room could be a trap. The M1's power wasn't just helpful, it was essential. Its .30-06 rounds could punch through barriers that stopped lighter bullets cold. Technical Sergeant Donald E. Rudolph from the 20th Infantry Regiment earned the Medal of Honor. There, on February 5, 1945, he cleared out an entire city block, almost by himself, firing over 400 rounds in 6 hours. His M1 never missed a beat. April 5, 1945, the start of Operation Iceberg, Okinawa, the biggest amphibious assault of the Pacific War. More than 180,000 Americans landed, nearly all with M1 Garands or carbines. The Japanese, led by General Mitsuru Ushijima, had built the island into a fortress using caves and coral ridges. Instead of trying to stop the Americans on the beaches, they planned to bleed them dry in a long, grinding battle of attrition. Private First Class Desmond Doss, a medic with the 77th Infantry Division, pulled off something nobody expected. He earned the Medal of Honor without ever firing a weapon. Even so, the men he rescued out there on the battlefield counted on their M1 Garands to keep Japanese soldiers pinned down while Doss dragged the wounded to safety. On May 5th, 1945, during the bloody assault on the Maida Escarpment, better known as Hacksaw Ridge, soldiers from the 77th laid down covering fire with their M1s. While bullets cracked and grenades exploded, Doss worked alone, hauling 75 injured men out of the line of fire. Corporal Thomas J. Coolidge from the 96th Infantry Division remembered just how fierce the fighting got. The Japanese stopped charging at them. Now they waited, dug in, forcing the Americans to fight for every cave and pillbox. Without the M1, we would have been overwhelmed, Coolidge said. If a spider hole opened up, you had to empty 8 rounds into it immediately or someone died. The battle for Sugarloaf Hill, May 12th to 18th, 1945, really showed just how savage Okinawa could be. For 6 days, Marines and the soldiers burned through more than 30,000 rounds of 36 ammo a day. M1 Garands fired until their barrels glowed red, pouring out the kind of sustained firepower that kept the enemy's heads down. Private First Class Clarence B. Craft of the 382nd Infantry Regiment earned the Medal of Honor on May 31st at Hen Hill, Okinawa. Armed with his M1 Garand and a fistful of grenades, he charged up a Japanese-held escarpment alone, wiped out multiple machine gun nests, and killed dozens of enemy soldiers in brutal close combat. The M1's rapid fire let him keep the enemy suppressed, while he kept moving up that steep, exposed slope. By the end of the Okinawa campaign on June 22nd, American forces had lost over 50,000 men. The Japanese lost more than 100,000. Through it all, the M1 Garand proved itself reliable, tough, and ready to fire no matter the mud, rain, or non-stop use that defined those 82 days. The numbers told the story. During World War II, factories cranked out 5,468 172 M1 Garands. Springfield Armory made about 3.5 million. Winchester, over 500,000. At the peak, more than 5,000 rifles rolled off the lines every day. Ammunition? 47 billion rounds of .30-06 produced. Cost per rifle $85 back then, which would be about $200 today. The M1 outclassed bolt-action rifles. Its rate of fire was 3 times higher. It could hit targets over 500 yards away with iron sights. And trained marksmen had a 73% hit rate at 300 yards. You could shoot over 100 rounds before the rifle started losing accuracy. Most M1s fired more than 5,000 rounds before jamming, and barrels lasted for 10,000 rounds or more. A regular U.S. Army rifle squad, 12 men, 10 M1s, and 2 Browning automatics could fire off 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute. A Japanese squad with Arisaka rifles managed only 150 to 180. That firepower edge meant American squads usually dominated in a fight. Master Sergeant John C. Clark from the 7th Infantry Division ran the numbers after a typical Okinawa skirmish. His platoon shot 4 times as much ammo as the Japanese, but inflicted 6 times the casualties. Simple arithmetic, he wrote. We could shoot faster, more accurately, and didn't have to stick our heads up to work a bolt. German reports in 1945 kept mentioning American firepower. One Wehrmacht training circular from December 1944 warned, the American infantry's firepower at the squad level exceeds our own by a factor of 3. Frontal engagements under 300 meters should be avoided unless you have heavy support. Japanese intelligence said much the same. A translated document from Imperial General Headquarters in March 1944 admitted the enemy's semi-automatic rifles have negated our traditional advantage in spirit and elan. New tactics must be developed to counter this technological superiority. The psychological impact was real too. Obergefreiter Friedrich Bertinroth, captured during the Battle of the Bulge, said during interrogation, "We could always tell when we faced Americans by the sound of their rifles. That constant rapid fire meant we couldn't advance without heavy casualties. It demoralized the younger soldiers who expected a more equal fight." The M1 Garand changed more than just a few battles. It rewrote the rulebook, forcing the army to rethink tactics, reshape industrial planning, and even change what it meant to be an infantryman. The U.S. Army overhauled its entire infantry doctrine around what the M1 could do. When the Army revised Field Manual 7-10 in 1944, everything shifted around the M1 Garand's rapid-fire punch. Suddenly, the idea of marching fire, walking forward while laying down a steady stream of shots, wasn't just theory. With the Garand in every rifleman's hands, squads stopped lining up like targets and started spreading out, hitting from all angles. Fire teams, a concept that really got its legs in Korea and Vietnam, actually started with the M1 fire superiority, always important, became the name of the game. American doctrine focused hard on winning and keeping that edge before doing anything else. That set the US apart. The Germans tried to move smart to get an upper hand. The Japanese banked on morale and shock. Americans just brought more fire. Mass-producing the Garand did more than fill arsenals. It rewired American industry. Techniques for making rifle barrels soon shaped how Americans built car parts and drilled for oil. The quality control that kept M1 parts interchangeable turned into the backbone of modern manufacturing. Springfield Armory's statistical process control became the gold standard, and the go-no-go gauge, critical for the Garand, spread everywhere. After WFU, companies like International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson Arms joined in for Korea. Harvester alone cranked out more than 337,000 Garands in just 3 years. That kind of output proved both the rifle's staying power and the speed at which American factories could gear up for war again. The M1 sparked a global scramble. The Soviets rushed the SVT-40. Germany hurried out the G-43, but couldn't really catch up. Fewer than 500,000 made it to the field. Even the British, usually slow to change, started experimenting with semi-auto designs. After the war, every big military dropped bolt actions for semi- or selective fire rifles. The bolt gun, king for half a century, faded to a sniper's tool within 10 years. Designs like the AK-47, built by Mikhail Kalashnikov after seeing American firepower up close, borrowed lessons from the Garand. NATO's FNFAL was designed to at least match, if not outdo, the M1. The German G3 fixed issues the Wehrmacht faced against American squads. Veterans kept talking about the psychological shock. Japanese POW Tadashi Suzuki said, "We were told Americans were soft, weak, but their rifles never stopped shooting. It destroyed our spirit. We called them the rifles that shoot forever." German Feldwebel Hans Müller recalled, "We knew the Americans by the sound of their rifles. That rapid bang, bang, bang meant take cover and wait for artillery. We couldn't match their rifle fire. It was like fighting men with machine guns." Even the Garand's famous ping, that sharp sound when it ejected an empty clip, turned out to be a weapon of its own. At first, people worried it gave away empty rifles, but in practice, enemies sometimes popped up too soon, thinking Americans were reloading, only to get cut down by other squad members still locked and loaded. The Garand's 8-round N-block clip modernized ammo supply. Clips could be preloaded, sealed up, and sent to the front, ready to go. A soldier could haul 80 rounds in 10 clips, easier than lugging 60 loose rounds. Standardizing on .30 Euro 6 made logistics simple. The same round fed the Garand, the old Springfield, the Bar, and most American machine guns. That meant fewer headaches for supply officers and more flexibility in battle. General Patton called the Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't just being dramatic. The M1 Garand really did change the way wars were fought. When North Korean troops stormed across the 38th parallel on June 25, 1950, American forces scrambled to respond. Many of the M1 Garands pulled from storage had already seen action in the World War II. Some of these rifles wore rebuild stamps from different arsenals, a patchwork of history stamped right into the wood and steel. Their durability said a lot about what happens when you mix good design with quality manufacturing. As the Korean War erupted, soldiers and Marines grabbed their M1s and went right back into the fight. The hills in Korea were brutal, especially in winter. Temperatures sometimes dropped to minus 35 degrees C, which pushed every weapon to its limit. But John Garand built his rifle for extremes. It just kept running, whether it was freezing or sweltering. While Chinese troops fought to unstick frozen bolt actions, American soldiers found their M1s stayed reliable as long as they kept them clean and oiled. Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez, who'd later become famous in Vietnam, first tasted combat in Korea with an M1 Garand in his hands. He remembered, "At the Busan perimeter, we were outnumbered sometimes 10 to 1. The M1 was the equalizer. When the Chinese came in their human waves, our sustained fire broke them every time." Technical Sergeant Vernon McGarity from the 393rd Infantry Regiment had already earned the Medal of Honor during the Battle of the Bulge. Artillery wounded him badly, face and legs, on the December 16, 1944. He ignored evacuation orders and got back to his unit near Crinkle, Belgium, fighting off German attacks with whatever weapons he could find, including his rifle. He only stopped when his position was overrun and he was captured. President Harry Truman pinned the Medal of Honor on him in January 1946. McGarity mostly used crew-served weapons, but his story showed the kind of determined defense that units with M1s could pull off. Fast forward to February 1951, the Battle of Chipyong-ni. The 23rd Infantry Regiment found itself surrounded, facing wave after wave of Chinese attacks at night. Private E First Class Herbert K. Pililau fought until his last breath. When his squad was overrun, he kept firing his M1 until he ran out of ammo, then swung it as a club, and when that broke, fought with his bare hands. He held his ground long enough for reinforcements to arrive and save his unit. He received the Medal of Honor posthumously. Officially, the M1 Garand left the front lines in 1958, replaced by the M14, but that wasn't really the end. Reserve and National Guard units kept carrying M1s into the 1970s. The Navy kept them on ships for line-throwing duty into the 1990s. The Greek army fired them in combat as late as 1974 during the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. Even today, you'll see M1s in the hands of military drill teams, the U.S. Marine Corps, Silent Drill Team, the Air Force Academy Cadet Honor Guard, and plenty of others. The rifle's balance and solid build make it perfect for precise drill movements. Over in Norway, the Royal Guard still uses M1 Garands for ceremonies, a nod to the American rifles that helped set their country free. John Garand, the man behind the rifle, was a true patriot. He gave the design to the government for free and never saw a dime from the more than 6 million rifles made. Congress tried to give him $100,000 as a thank you, but the bill didn't pass. He did receive other honors, the Medal for Meritorious Service in 1941 and the Medal for Merit in 1944. Garand stayed at Springfield Armory until he retired in 1953. After 34 years on the job, he held 54 firearms patents, all assigned to the government without any extra pay. He lived quietly in Springfield, Massachusetts until his death in 1974. He got to see his rifle serve in 3 wars and arm millions. In a rare interview from the 1940s, Garand said, "I am not a genius. I am just a mechanic who loves to solve problems." The M1 rifle was simply a problem that needed solving. How to give our soldiers the best possible weapon? If my rifle saved even one American life, then my work was worthwhile. The numbers behind the M1 Garand tell a story that goes way beyond blueprints or production stats. American infantry casualties in World War II, 661,000. Japanese infantry losses against American forces, between 1.5 and 2 million. German infantry casualties on the Western Front, about 800,000. M1 units had a kill ratio of 3.1 to 6.1 depending on the terrain. Estimated enemy soldiers killed by M1 fire, over 750,000. American lives saved by that extra firepower, top 200,000. These weren't just about training or tactics. The firepower edge from having a semi-automatic rifle was huge. Military historians figure that if Americans had stuck with bolt-action rifles, casualty rates would have been 30 to 40% higher. That's maybe another 200,000 American deaths. The M1 didn't just change the battle, it saved lives. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, who led the Japanese on Iwo Jima, didn't sugarcoat things in his final report. The enemy's individual firepower exceeds our estimates by 300%. Each American rifleman has the firepower of 3 of our soldiers. This disparity cannot be overcome by spiritual strength alone. He saw firsthand that grit alone couldn't match the firepower Americans brought to the fight. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, watching American troops in North Africa, jotted in his diary their individual weapons, particularly their semi-automatic rifles, give them a conclusive advantage in meeting engagements. We must avoid infantry confrontations where possible. He wasn't wrong. The M1 Garand was changing the game. Audie Murphy, America's most decorated Dwawi soldier, gave full credit to his M1 Garand. During his Medal of Honor action on January 26, 1945, Murphy used his M1 to single-handedly hold off an entire German company, firing more than 200 rounds in one brutal engagement. "The M1 never let me down," he wrote. "When artillery fell short, when air support didn't show, that rifle kept him alive." Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov saw American troops in action in 1945 and came away impressed. "The American soldier is well armed. His semi-automatic rifle gives him a significant advantage in combat. We must develop similar weapons for the Red Army." That observation pushed the Soviets to create the SKS and later on the AK-47. The M1 Garand grew into more than just a rifle. It became a symbol, proof of American industrial muscle and democratic strength. Citizen soldiers from farms and factories carried it, and it outperformed the weapons of professional armies from totalitarian regimes. After the war, surveys showed that 94% of veterans rated the M1 Garand as excellent or very good. When asked what single piece of gear mattered most to victory, the M1 Garand kept landing in the top 3, right up there with the Jeep and the C-47. Cartoonist Bill Malden, known for his Willie and Joe strips, nailed the bond between American soldiers and their M1s. In one cartoon, a soldier is cleaning his muddy rifle while ignoring his own filthy state. The caption says it all. "I'll worry about me after I take care of her. She takes care of me." After WTO, the U.S. shipped M1 Garands all over the world. $600,000 to South Korea, 200,000 to Greece, 312,000 to Turkey, 165,000 to Iran, 150,000 to the Philippines, 130,000 to Pakistan, 85,000 to Denmark, 75,000 to Norway, and 232,000 to Italy, including those made under license. These rifles shaped a generation of soldiers and weapons designers everywhere. The semi-automatic principle, thanks to the Garand, became the global standard. Just about every successful military rifle since owes something to the M1 Garand. The M14, which replaced it, was basically an M1 with a detachable magazine and selective fire. The Ruger Mini 14, a favorite of law enforcement and civilians, copied the Garand's action. Even today's M16 and M4 carbine use ideas first proven in the M1. John Garand's gas-operated rotating bolt set the bar for reliability and accuracy. His way of controlling gas pressure through a tiny port in the barrel still shows up in modern rifles. The operating rod and bolt design, though updated, trace straight back to Garand's original 1930s patents. These days, M1 Garands are top-shelf collectibles. The civilian marksmanship program has handed out more than 500,000 surplus M1s to Americans. Many have stamps from WW, Korea, and beyond. Real pieces of history you can hold. At Camp Perry, Ohio, the national matches still feature M1 Garand competitions. Shooters using 70-year-old rifles pull off accuracy that would have amazed the soldiers who first lugged them into battle. The John C. Garand match, started in 1985, honors the inventor and proves the design still holds up. Collectors prize rifles with real war stories. An M1 Garand, confirmed to have landed on D-Day, can fetch over 25,000 on. Even the common ones are still reliable, still functional, a testament to solid design and manufacturing. The M1 Garand story still matters. It's a lesson in how the right technology in the hands of the individual soldier makes all the difference. Outnumbered American troops in the Pacific didn't just win with bravery, they won because their firepower was better. That thinking, focusing on giving each soldier the best tools, still shapes the way armies equip their people today. If you want to know what really shapes military power, look at the factories. The heart of any army is its ability to churn out weapons, and not just a few, millions, built right and built fast. Take the M1 Garand, for example. America managed to make over 5 million of them, and every single one still met strict standards. That mattered just as much as the rifle's actual design. Honestly, not much has changed since then. Modern armies still live or die by their factories and by how well they keep an eye on quality. When it comes to weapons, simple and reliable always beats fancy and fragile. The M1 was a workhorse. Easy to use, easy to fix, and tough enough for any battlefield, whether it was mud, snow, or jungle. These days, a lot of weapons are packed with features, but sometimes that just means more ways for things to break. The M1 never had that problem. But a good rifle alone doesn't win wars. Training matters. The M1 gave each soldier a huge leap in firepower, but only if he knew how to handle it. When you combine top-notch gear with well-trained troops, you get an army that's hard to stop. There's something else too. American industry outproduced the Axis. Democratic factories filled with regular folks who suddenly became welders and machinists outbuilt the rigid, top-down factories of Germany and Japan. That's not just history, it's a lesson that still matters as democracies and authoritarian regimes compete in today's world. You know what's wild? America's enemies respected the M1 Garand more than anyone. After the war, German and Japanese officers pored over this rifle, trying to figure out how it gave American soldiers such an edge. they reached the same conclusion. The semi-automatic rifle tipped the scales. Japanese training manuals warned troops not to take on American riflemen unless they outnumbered them 3-1 or had extra firepower. A German report flat out said that old assault tactics just didn't work anymore, not against Americans with M1s. Talk to the men who carried the M1 and you'll hear the same thing. Corporal Charles E. Commando Kelly, Medal of Honor recipient, put it plainly. People always ask him what won the war. Was it the atomic bomb, the big bombers, the tanks? He'd just shake his head and say, it was the M1 rifle. Every GI had one. Everyone could use it, and it never let us down. Technical Sergeant Vernon McGarity saw the impact up close during the Battle of the Bulge. Even after being captured, he remembered how his unit, armed with M1s, held out against overwhelming odds. They didn't win, but they made the Germans pay for every yard. Then there's Private First Class Albert E. Schwab, who wrote home from Okinawa, "Mom, this rifle they gave me is something special. It shoots as fast as I can aim. The Japanese just can't match it. If I make it home, it'll be because of this rifle." He never made it back, but his words stuck. Picture this. It's still dark on October 26th, 1942. Staff Sergeant Mitchell Page stands his ground on Guadalcanal, M1 in hand, while the 64th Infantry Regiment brings their Garands into the fight. In their arms, these soldiers carried more than rifles. They held a piece of American ingenuity, a tool built by an immigrant's imagination, mass-produced by a nation that believed in outworking and outsmarting its enemies. From the chaos on Henderson Field in 42 to the last shots in August 45, the M1 proved itself everywhere. Frozen forests, steamy jungles, wide-open fields. Didn't matter. It turned everyday Americans into the world's most effective infantry. The numbers say it all. Over 5 million rifles made, more than 16 million servicemen armed, and casualty ratios that shocked the world. But there's a deeper truth behind those stats. The M1 Garand put real firepower in the hands of regular soldiers. What used to take a whole crew, now one person could do. General MacArthur once said, "The Garand rifle is one of the greatest contributions to our armed forces." He wasn't exaggerating. The M1 meant more than just victory. It stood for American values, innovation, quality, reliability, and the belief that free people, armed with the best tools, could take on tyranny and win. The M1 didn't just change how armies fought. It changed what was possible for the individual soldier. For the first time, one rifleman could control the fight. And that shift was as big as when armies switched from single-shot muskets to magazine rifles. Today, when historians talk about why the Allies won World War II, they mention industry, logistics, air power, and code breaking. All of that mattered. But ask the guys who were there, and they'll tell you the M1 Garand made the difference. In the mud of Italy, deep in the Pacific jungles, through the hedgerows of France, and on Korea's frozen hills, victory really came down to the grit of soldiers and the rifles they carried. For Americans, that rifle was the M1 Garand. John Garand, the man behind it, passed away in 1974. He saw his invention carried by 3 generations of American troops. He never chased fame or fortune. He just found quiet satisfaction in knowing his rifle helped defend freedom when it mattered most. That, he once said, was his real reward, knowing American soldiers had the best rifle in the world when they needed it. But let's hear from someone who truly knew what that meant. Staff Sergeant Raymond Zuzman, he got the Medal of Honor, though he didn't live to receive it, wrote his last letter home from France in 1944. He told his mom, "If you want to know what's keeping me alive over here, it's my rifle, my buddies, and the knowledge that we've got the best equipment in the world. This M1 rifle, it's like having a guardian angel that never misses. The M1 Garand didn't just come from one mind. It came from workshops across America, from factories running night and day, from the hands of millions of soldiers, sailors, and Marines, and from the genius of one Canadian-born inventor. General Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, and he wasn't exaggerating. Those 5 million rifles didn't just arm a military, they changed warfare itself and helped stop tyranny in its tracks. There's a sound, if you know it, you don't forget it. The sharp ping of an ejected clip. It's the sound of freedom pushing forward, 8 rounds at a time, across battlefields from Normandy to Okinawa. That ping still echoes, not just in the memories of those who fought, but in the gratitude of all who came to come after. Someday, the last World War II veteran will be gone, and the final Korean war soldier will tell his last story. But the M1 Garand will still be here, on museum shelves, in collectors' hands, at target ranges in Camp Perry. It's a piece of history you can still hold, proof that American know-how, hard work, and courage came together at a moment when civilization itself was on the line. 5 million rifles, 16 million soldiers, one brilliant design, one immigrant inventor, one free nation standing up to tyranny. The M1 Garand was, and still is, the greatest battle implement Afrin ever made, not just for what it was, but for what it meant. Free people, armed and ready, able to push back against anything and keep liberty alive for those who'd come next.